I'm Tenitra Batiste, and some wins are legacy wins, and they just mean more.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and a wise man once said, the only thing you have to fear is Josh Allen himself.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and Jeff Olbrick, head coaching candidate.
ATL! ATL!
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host, Aaron Freeman, and Locked On analyst, Jarvis Davis. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So it's a big game this Sunday with a big guy under center. Do the Falcons have what it takes to stop him? And there's another big guy under center, speaking of, for the Falcons. Are you comfortable if he's the reason the Falcons get another dub? We'll talk about that. And X factors for the Falcons in all three phases of the game. It's going to be so important against the Buffalo Bills. But first things first, let's talk about something that we started, some part of a conversation, Jarvis and Aaron, on Monday's Squad Show, just talking about what we felt the identity of this team was in the first quarter of the season as we wrap up that quarter, talking about what the identity was on offense, what it was on defense, and even what it was on special teams. Now, Raheem Morris stated, if we're thinking about the identity, quote, we're a running football team, when he was asked that question. Now, the Falcons have 276 rushing plays and 83 passing plays so far this season. So that definitely makes the case for Rob. But for you, Jarvis, is this where the offense needs to be in order to reach their goal to get to the playoffs?
1,000%. Because here's the thing. Your best player is your running back and Bijan Robinson. So anyway, you get establishing him as the foundation of your offense, turning around and handing the football off to him, and then playing off of that to get to that deep ball that you want to be able to do and take advantage of that asset that is Michael Penix's arm. So yeah, you have to be able to run the football. This has to be the identity of your football team, and I think that as you continue to establish that, that is going to be one of the things that you have to keep an eye on, because your quarterback is in his first full season as a starter, and you don't. There's a possibility that you can have a game like a Carolina Panthers game could happen again. You don't want it to. I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to play that badly again. But so when that happens, this is the breaking cases of emergency plan. Who you are. All right, you go back to who you are when you have those moments where your quarterback is struggling, trying to figure things out. So I think Raheem Morris was spot on when he said that, hey, we're a running football team, because that's exactly how this team is built. Because guess what? Your offensive line really likes run blocking. So yeah, and your best player is your running back. So yeah, it should be your who you are as an offense.
Yeah, and I think when you look at how this thing played out for the Falcons in said first quarter, Aaron, is Bijan Robinson, who got honors for Offensive Player of the Month for the month of September in the NFC. So it speaks to the point that when that run game is functioning on all cylinders, especially if that run game results in punching it into the end zone, that is your formula for winning. And you look at what Bijan's been able to do so far this season, and we know really it's the yards from scrimmage that make him as amazing as he is. But let's just look at what he does on the ground. And you're talking about a guy who has 64 carries, which interestingly enough is tied for like 31st in the league, or 21st rather. But where he starts to improve is in the yards per carry, 314 yards, averaging almost 5 yards a carry. So you're talking about every time you put the ball in Bijan's hands, you're halfway to moving the chains. So looking at what Ross said, about the identity of this team. Is it where the offense needs to be as far as being a run football team in order for them to reach their goal? First goal, beating the Buffalo Bills Monday. Secondly, being a postseason team.
Yes and no. I think. I think your run game is your identity. That is 100% true. I think your run game is doing a lot to sort of set the floor for this offense. But if the Falcons are going to be a playoff team, they're going to need at some point later this season, probably down the stretch, and we've seen this play out a number of times with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the last couple of years, and why they've won the division is usually because once you get to Thanksgiving, December, into January, Baker Mayfield starts to ball out, and they go on a run to finish the season strong, and they've overtaken the Falcons in each of the last couple of seasons where the Falcons have been a run-first team in all of those years, dating back to the 22 season with Mariota and Desmond Ridder and then Kirk Cousins last year. And so to me, when you put the caveat on, in terms of what this team needs to do in order to make the postseason, I think at some point you're going to need to have Michael Penix sort of take the lead. And this offense, again, not to say you're going to abandon the run, because it's always going to be the foundation of your offense. Like I said, it's going to set the floor. And as Jarvis just, pointed out, when you want to put Michael Penix in favorable situations, you want to be able to run the ball effectively on early downs and short yardage in the red zone. So it makes it easier on your young quarterback. But at some point, the passing game is going to have to, to me, take center stage and be the thing that's going to lift this team over the top to not just be another sort of 7-8 win type of team, because that's what the Falcons have been with this run first mentality. And at some point you're going to need your passing game to get you to a point where you probably will need to win 10 or more games in order to make the playoffs, especially in a loaded NFC as things look, a month into the season. And some of those games that you're going to play down the stretch, against the Rams, against the Seahawks, all offenses that are off to good starts this season. Tampa Bay, of course. I don't know if you're going to be able to just run the football and expect to beat those teams. We'll see how it all plays out. But I think absolutely the identity of this offense is built around the run game. But at the end of the day, I do think once we get later in the season, you're going to need your passing game to kind of at least match where your running game is, so that you can be at the very least a balanced offense. And we sit here and we talk about Michael Penix and his passing attack with the same sort of, or maybe we don't, but opposing defenses talk about it with the same trepidation that they have with having to deal with Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, and I hear you on that, Free, because you start thinking to yourself, as the season wears on, and even in the postseason, as potent as the run game has to be, as much as you need to be able to impose your will. And if the run game is effective, that's probably a sign that you're winning in the trenches, that your O-line is beating that other team's D-line. But ultimately, as we start getting deeper into the season and you are facing off against those high-powered offenses, it's going to take your passing game to at least match on some level, as opposed to being maybe a 2/3 to 1/3. Probably going to have to be more like 60-40 in order for you to get into the postseason, but more importantly, possibly get deeper into the postseason. And we'll talk a little bit more later about what Michael Penix Jr. and his passing attack is going to mean, even in this game against the Buffalo Bills Monday. But Jarvis, you think about as well the Falcons and their ability to establish the run against the Bills, which is very possible against that defense. But thinking about that, will that be enough for the Falcons to get a win on Sunday? Because you're not just trying to get your run game in gear against the defense that you can do it against. You've got to face that offense. And I'll go back to your mantra, Jarvis. You got to face an offense that, if the Falcons do what you ask them to do, which is score at least 28 points a game, that's a minimum just to be in the conversation with Josh Allen and these Buffalo Bills, because we know that they can score at will.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you going back to the game against the New England Patriots, I don't expect to see that same Bills team, because after going back and looking at the game, there were so many penalties, just just dumb mistakes, and and this was the Bills playing at home too, so it was just so many weird things that you're not used to seeing with the offense because they used to operating at a high level. I think they were last time I checked, they were averaging like 33 points a game. So we're not used to seeing them scoring 20, right? So I don't think that I don't expect the Falcons to hold them to that, because they don't lose in back-to-back games. I thought Free and Joe Marino of Locked On Bills, I think they had an excellent conversation on the crossover about them not losing back-to-back games. So I think that when you look at this run game, being able to establish up, they should be able to take advantage of this Bills defense. But I'm kind of with Free on this one. There's going to be opportunities for them to be able to take deep shots because they're going to load up against the run. Like the Falcons have established themselves. They've established an identity, right? What you see on tape, okay, yeah, they're going to turn around and hand the ball off 7. So we're going to have to get some help down there because we haven't been great, as far as setting the edge and being able to get off blocks and be able to make tackles because the Buffalo Bills, I'm sorry, excuse me, but not to be able to get off tackles and stop the run. You got to be able to do that as a defensive line. So for me, I feel like they're going to have some opportunities to be able to take some deep shots, and we'll see once the injury report comes out where Darnell Mooney sits. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the biggest key as to if he plays. And then when they get these if he does, they get these opportunities to take these deep shots because the Buffalo Bills are loading up against the run. They're bringing that extra safety down, trying to load up and trying to stop 7. They have to be able to hit those shots downfield. And I don't think that just being able to run the football and drill that clock down is going to be enough to beat this Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah. Unless by drilling the clock down, you mean time of possession is like Falcons 59, Bills a minute. But
that would be amazing. That would be amazing for sure.
But Aaron, other than keeping the ball out of Josh Allen's hands for 59 minutes and 59 seconds, the Falcons have to be more concerned about what it is that they're going to do in terms of, if that's their identity as a run football team, being able to run against the Bills, but understanding that that's probably not going to be enough to get you a win against the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same conversation we just had. Like, your run game is going to get you to the door.
Yes.
You're going to need your passing game to kind of get you through the door, especially against this Bills team, as you guys just broke down, that has consistently averaged, 30 points over the last year. You go back over the last 3 seasons, the teams that have the most 30-plus point games, Detroit, Baltimore, Buffalo, they're all in a tier by themselves in the NFL at the top of the league in terms of being the highest scoring offenses consistently in this league. And as Jarvis said, like, I don't think you can, go into this game expecting, if you're just going to focus entirely off of the run game, that's the type of game where you're like, okay, maybe you can win a 20-17 game. And I don't know if you can really win that type of game against this Bills team where it does feel like they're going to at least get 24 points, and they're also a team that's like, hey, we don't mind running the football. James Cook is cooking this year, pun intended, in terms of what they can do. And, Josh Allen can get out there if he needs to go out there and, like, it's 3rd and 14. Okay, I'll run for 15 yards. I dare Billy Bowman to try to tackle me in the open field. I outweigh that man by like 118 pounds. So it's one of those things where, like, I do feel like the running game is going to help the Falcons get into a position where they can be competitive, do all the things, keep Josh Allen and that offense on the sideline, control the clock, move the ball down the field. But ultimately, if you're going to win this game, you're going to need some key signature moments, a couple of chunk plays, as Jarvis broke down. Hopefully the Darnell Mooney, if not to him, Kyle Pitts, Drake London have to step up, Bijan Robinson as well in the passing game. You got to convert in the red zone. And again, I would love to see this team do what they did against Washington, where it's like, oh, they're at the 15 and just run it into the end zone. But I do feel like at some point your passing game is going to have to come through to you, especially in the fourth quarter if it's a one-score game where you're not going to be in a situation where oh, we're just going to run the football. You need to go down the field and score points, and that's going to be on the back of Michael Penix. So I feel like the run game is going to be a big part of the Falcons' success. But ultimately, if this team is going to win, there's going to need to be at least a couple of plays that Michael Penix in his passing game makes with his arm.
And I think there may need to be a couple of plays, not just that Michael Penix Jr. makes with his arms free, but whom he makes those plays to. And as much as it would be so good for the Falcons to get Darnell Mooney back and that he be a healthy Darnell Mooney, I think we all agree that Drake London is, if not 100%, he's darn close because of how he looked against the Commanders. It's great to have wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. But when you start looking into the box scores of quietly where the Buffalo Bills may be exploited, it's that tight end. So Kyle Pitts could have a really good game because not just in the Patriots game, and only a couple of receptions, by the way, from Hunter Henry, but it's the fact that he was getting chunk yards with those. And then when you look into even the games that they won, if you will, it's what those tight ends were able to do. So Kyle Pitts might have a sneaky good game if Zach Robinson schemes this thing the right way, because that could be that other space where, hey, yes, your run game establishes that, but what you do in that passing game and who you do it with could be so critical and so very key. So speaking of that, we talked about this guy, this MVP, this big dude that Raheem Morris actually had big things and great things to say. Can the Falcons stop him or just hope to contain? We'll talk about that in next up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, most people, they talk about how much they love FanDuel because it has so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. And it makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And don't forget, this is a big showdown Monday night from these Atlanta Falcons hosting the Buffalo Bills, a team that's 4-1 and looking to bounce back from a tough loss in their division last week. Meanwhile, the Falcons are looking to build on a nice win before the bye. So you want to make the game even more interesting? You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. So don't forget, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So, Aaron, Coach Raheem Morris spoke glowingly about NFL MVP Josh Allen and what he's capable of doing on the field. And listen, there are some players that you just kind of know you can maybe look to stop them. And hey, I'm not going to say they can't stop him because maybe you agree that the Falcons can stop him. But we're talking about a guy that so far this season, and I'm just giving you his passing stats. We know how freaky, scary he is, being a dual threat QB, but 9 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions, 1,217 yards in the air. It's crazy for him. And you know him. He's always going to go off from a rush perspective. Not a lot of rushes, 40 carries this year, 212 yards, but it's what he's averaging, 5.3 yards a game. It's what he's averaging in touchdowns, and a 40-yard run was his long of the season. So I ask again, my friend, can the Falcons look to stop Josh Allen, or is it a situation where they're hoping and looking to just contain him?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. You got to contain Josh Allen. As I said at the top, the only thing you have to fear is Josh Allen himself. It's basically the only thing that can stop Josh Allen is Josh Allen. Basically what I was getting at. Like, we saw this past week against New England, and we've seen it a handful of times in recent years, not as much as we saw in the young Josh Allen's career, where Josh just decides you can only live once. He likes to be YOLO Josh, and he I can make any throw possible on the football field, and sometimes he pays for that hubris. You saw that last week where his one interception against New England was him throwing late over the middle into double coverage because he's Josh Allen. It's like, I won the MVP. I'm married to a very famous Hollywood actress. I can do whatever I want to do. And so, he paid for that. And hopefully the Falcons will get Jesse Bates going. As we know, he likes to get pick sixes in these throwback uniforms, and maybe he can, take one of these away from Josh Allen. But other than that sort of thing, there's not a whole lot you can do to kind of stop Josh Allen. It's something Jarvis and I talked about on Locked On Falcons last week, where it's like, the Bills typically see a lot of man coverage because teams basically like we got to sort of shrink the windows by trying to play man coverage against them. And who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league in beating man coverage? It's Josh Allen. So it's like there's really not a whole lot you can do schematically to stop him. You just, as you said, you contain him. You hopefully can prevent him from busting those big runs that he is known to do on some of those scrambles. You hope that you can sort of limit him, extending plays outside the pocket. And it's like, oh, there's Keon Coleman 40 yards down the field. Let me just throw it up and see if he's going to catch it. You just try to take away those types of big, sort of game-changing plays, and you have to make him work for every yard, work for every point. And, sometimes you succeed doing that. As you look at the Bills' record over the last couple of years, not a whole lot of success doing that. So you kind of need Josh, to come down to Atlanta, take part in the culture, get him some lemon pepper wings, hang out late at night, be a little hungover,
head to the city. Excuse me.
You need that from Josh Allen in order to put your best foot forward for this Falcons defense. So it's one of those things where it's like you can hope to contain him, but you're definitely not going to stop him.
Yeah. And so I think, Jarvis, that other than some Atlanta trickery, if you will, Free agrees that Josh Allen is more of a hope to contain versus a stopping. But I mean, what do you think? Do you think that these Falcons have something in the toolkit that might allow them to stop Josh Allen? Or are we looking at a situation where, hey, even if you can contain him, that could be a recipe for success?
Yeah, you're looking to contain him. You try to see if there's one element of his game that you can take away. And that, for me, it is that second play. Sirs, defensive line, edge guys, James Pierce Jr., Jalen Walker. Hey, man, look, if you want to prove your value, JPJ, if you want to prove that you were worth that first round pick in 2026, oh my gosh, this is the game to show up, sir. Because guess what? Once Josh Allen, if you're playing man coverage, the man is looking to take off, running. He loves that type of stuff, especially on third and long or second and long, second and 18. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. Y'all playing man coverage? Don't worry about it. I'm about to take about 9, 10 right here and then get out of bounds. You ain't gonna touch me. Don't even try to tackle me because I probably weigh more than all your linebackers and all your safeties. So, that's kind of where I am in life right now. So, and then you set yourself up for a manageable third down. And then what do? So it's going to be, this is a big test for Jeff Ulbrich. I think this is probably the biggest test he's probably going to face this season, because this is one of those games where you can establish yourself as one of those guys, right? Because you talk about the offensive coordinators, right? Joe Brady's trying to creep his name back into the fold with that. You can creep your name back into the fold with being one of those defensive coordinators. Like he had Jeff Ulbrich had at least a decent showing against Josh last year in one of those matchups for the New York Jets. So when you think about it from that aspect, I think it's going to be a lot of, in those early downs, you got to play a little bit more man coverage in those early downs. I am not a fan of them playing man on third down, because I feel like Josh will continue to kill them. So I think Jeff Ulbrich is going to have to mix it up a little bit. You're going to have to get Xavier Watts, Jesse Bates the third. These going to be big games for those guys. The safeties and trying to disguise coverages, doing a little cheating, having Josh thinking it's this cover, it's man, or actually it's zone, or are we in 3 or we in 4? Like, what are we doing? So, and I think that guessing game that Jesse Bates is going to have to play is going to be probably going to be the difference maker in getting those turnovers, because you have to force a turnover in a game like this, because you're not going to stop Josh Allen. You're going to only hope to contain him, and hopefully they can at least take one of those elements away from his game.
Yeah, and Free Raw also said he's looking forward to getting AJ Terrell back this week, which could be so critical in as Jarvis, and actually Free, as you mentioned, when you're looking at what at the options that Josh Allen has, particularly Keon Coleman, who's really kind of starting to wake up and do his thing. It's exciting to be able to bring AJ Terrell back. If so, after, of course, he missed a couple games dealing with a hamstring injury. But what are some of the things that Jeff Ulbrich can do to take advantage if Terrell's a go Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, you go back to what Ulbrich did in New York. You know, they played a lot of man coverage. Obviously, they had one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL in Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. AJ Terrell is a very good corner. Mike Hughes, I think, played really well against Washington, but I don't know if the Falcons are quite throwing their hat into the rink of best cornerback duos with him as the sort of number 2 at this stage. So I think you really need AJ Terrell if you're going to play that style of defense, which is probably what the Falcons will wind up doing. And I think the hope that you have with AJ Terrell is he kind of just takes away one side of the field. Whoever the receiver lines up on that side of the field, whether it's Keon Coleman, whether it's Curtis Samuel, whether it's Khalil Shakir, etc., you just kind of hope that when Josh Allen goes after that, and talking with Joe Marino of Locked On Bills, like, Josh Allen ain't afraid of anybody, so he'll throw at any corner. But you're just kind of hoping, okay, throw at AJ Terrell, and hopefully he'll make you pay by breaking up those passes and hopefully snagging an interception or 2 and just kind of taking away that side of the field, which then allows the Falcons to have Jesse Bates and Xavier Watts kind of cheat to the other side of the field where Mike Hughes is, where he's probably going to need a little bit more help, along with Billy Bowman on the inside at that nickel spot. And then you can get maybe Jesse Bates being like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about AJ's side, so I can kind of cheat over to this other side and maybe, jump a throw and get an interception that way. And so I think that's kind of the key that you're hoping with AJ Terrell, that he can just go back to being locked down on one side of the field, and that will allow your defense to just kind of, okay, well, we can give safety help to the other side of the field, and that's going to bring up the rest of this cornerback room to a level comparable to AJ Terrell, just because those guys can be a little bit more aggressive and say, okay, I got Jesse's got my back, or X has got my back. And so I can be a little bit more aggressive and maybe potentially jump some of those throws. And that could lead to some of the turnovers that the Falcons are going to potentially need.
Yeah. And for you, Jarvis, what do you think Jeff Ulbrich can do to take advantage if Terrell is able to go Monday night?
Oh, you're gonna be very comfortable playing man coverage on those early downs, like I mentioned. Because here's the thing, like when you have a guy that you can kind of leave alone, so to speak, like Freese mentioned, like, oh, I don't have to worry about that side of the field. I can roll coverage over here. I can have my vet safety cheat a little bit, like, hey man, you got Keon over there. All right, cool. I'm good. Let me go over here. Let me go play around a little bit. Let me see if I can turn this big boy over. So I think that you can start to have those good times, as we talk about, when you are having your cornerback one playing at a high level, taking away whoever lines up on that side of the football field. And I think that when you give yourself those options, it makes way for you to have a little bit more time to be able to rush the passer too, because you're disrupting. You're up on the line of scrimmage as a cornerback. You're pressing. You're trying to disrupt the timing. Even though Josh Allen works on his own time seemingly when he plays football and gets away with that for some strange reason, but I think that when you have that initial disruption at the line of scrimmage with your corners up, I think that gives James Pierce Jr. a little bit more time. That gives Jalen Walker a little bit more time to be able to work their moves, get off those blocks, and then force Josh to make a move, and not necessarily have him back there sitting back trying to find someone to get open. And I think that once you force him to make decisions and dictate that to him, I feel like Jeff Ulbrich will be in a good space and with AJ Terrell being in the fold and being able to play around with those coverages, specifically with that man, and being able to give the guys up front a little bit more time to get home.
And guys, this is just a question out of curiosity, just to kind of get your opinion. But you also have a guy in Jeff Ulbrich who was a defensive coordinator for the New York Jets for 3 years, and of course was an interim head coach for a portion of time there as well. So he had an opportunity to see Josh Allen at least twice a year in that window of time. Do you think that maybe gives a little bit of edge, even if it's just, hey, Brick saw him enough to know, oh, that tendency is this or that tendency is that?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's just having that experience, it's going to be like, okay, well, we were able to get him in 2022 on this sort of blitz sort of thing and that sort of thing, and you can kind of play the chess match, and the Bills can be like, okay, well, we know Ulbrich likes to do this or whatever, and then you can be like, okay, well, where they expect us to zig, we're going to zag a little bit. So you can play that chess game a little bit more than you could if you were just a brand new defensive coordinator, like, you haven't played Josh Allen in 4 years and you're just kind of like,
well, you've never been a defensive coordinator ever in the NFL before.
I wasn't
and I dig on James.
I wasn't going to go there because this man catches us straight every single week.
Every show.
I'm just like,
every show.
It's like we're just beating that dead horse. But
James. Sorry, James.
We'll continue to do so. It is what it is. But
yes,
I do think like it's just one of those things where having those reps and those experience just gives you a slight edge. Again, it's not going to win you the game, but it's just like a couple of select moments, a couple of sort of key situations you could have that experience. I do think will help Jeff Ulbrich in this defense.
Yeah, I think familiarity breeds some success, right, in life. So I definitely think there can be some carryover as to, okay, I know this is what worked. Like Free said, having a reference point. Okay, I know with this pressure, with this nickel pressure, I was able to get some good pressure on him. I made him get rid of the football, or I had a good tackling nickel corner that was able to get him on the ground, or get his hand on his arms to knock the ball down. It's just little things that are going to what you're going to need to beat a guy like Josh, because it's not going to be, oh yeah, I know if I run X coverage, this is gonna, he throws a pick every time. It's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be little things like they're going to determine whether or not how the game flows. So if you are having a situation where Josh is just sitting back there completing passes, he's got all the time in the day, Jeff Ulbrich, I'm like, okay, all right, we're gonna go with this nickel pressure, and we're gonna see if we can get home or either disrupt what's going on, because the flow of the game is just not working out in our favor at that time.
Yeah, indeed. So it'll be good, kind of interesting to see if there are any little nuances that maybe Jeff Ulbrich can take advantage of, having had to coach against Josh Allen and company for several seasons with the New York Jets. Now, on the flip side, as good as Josh Allen is, there is another guy on the other side of the field who is slowly but surely showing us how good he can be. But is it enough? Is it going to be enough to pull off the upset? We will talk about that in the look ahead. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. So I use GameTime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the GameTime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up GameTime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as well, as low as $100. And the app is super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. And you got to love the zone deals where you can pick the section, GameTime picks the seats, and you can save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets in recent memory. So download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, That's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. So, Jarvis, when you look at this game, we keep talking about the heroics of Josh Allen and the high-powered Bills offense and what they can do with the Falcons offense. Put up 34 points in a win against the Washington Commanders before the bye. Michael Penix Jr., big part of that, completing over 70% of his passes in that game. But remember, we started the show talking off about the fact that this team's identity is that of a running football team. So when you think about that, are you comfortable? Should there be a situation where Michael Penix Jr. and Zach Robinson, the player and the scheme and the execution, come together to be the reason for the upset? Because remember, they're 4.5-point underdogs at home, the Falcons are. So can it be about Penix and Zach Robinson if the Falcons are going to pull off this upset?
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, I think they're going to have to hit those big plays. They're going to have to get a couple of deep shots, a couple of explosives in order to defeat this team, because I don't see a scenario where the defense is going to hold them to 20 points. I don't see back-to-back bad performances from that offense. So when you think about this new communication with Zach Robinson being on the sidelines now, we like what we saw against the Commanders. I want to see it again. And guess what? You're at home, so ain't no excuses. So him getting to the line of scrimmage a little early with about 10 seconds left on the clock so you can see what's going on. Okay, let me motion this guy over. Let's see what coverage they're in, so I can kind of pretty much have a good idea of where I'm going before the ball is snapped. You know, so I think that, or just to help me with my overall pre-snap reads altogether, I think Michael Penix has to do that again in this big moment. We were super excited last year when they went up to Washington, D.C. and played the Commanders, and he drilled that ball into Kyle Pitts' gut for a touchdown. And we're sitting up here like, oh, my gosh, they got to actually have a chance to win this game. Even like he was going battle for battle with Jaden Daniels. You know, like people were like, oh, okay, what about this dude? So I think that, yes, I want to see that again. I want to see the type of performance that we saw against the Commanders. I'm not expecting him to complete over 70% of his pass. That'd be great if he did it. Absolutely. I would love that. I would love to have that conversation after the game on our post-game squad. So, yeah, for sure. But I think we're just in a moment where we don't want to see what happened in Carolina. We don't want to see what that happened. And I think that this is another scenario where you're at home, you got the new form of communication, so you can talk to your OC after every play if you want to, or come into the sidelines. You all can have that conversation while the defense is on the field. So I think that with the peak, environment for you to have success, you're in it again in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So yeah, my expectations are that they will do well. Michael Penix will play well enough for them to have an opportunity to win this game.
Yeah. And what about you, Bree? Again, we talked about the running game being the identity of this football team, the identity of this offense. But in a game like what we're going to see with Josh Allen, where we know they can light it up, you really need your passing game to be as effective, if not more effective. So is it a game where you see Michael Penix Jr. and what he's doing on the field, Zach Robinson and what he's scheming from the sidelines being that reason the Falcons pull off the upset?
Yeah, I think it goes back to something that Jarvis said, where you're going to have some opportunities to hit some shots down the field with Buffalo, stacking the box to try to slow down Bijan Robinson in this game. Yeah. And you're just going to kind of need, like we saw against Washington, you're going to need Penix to hit those deep shots, right? Again, it may not be, 7-8 deep balls or anything like that. It just may be like 2 or 3 that you're going to need to hit. And that's going to be a big thing of getting those chunk plays, potentially maybe scoring a couple of touchdowns off of those plays. And if you can do that, I think that's going to put this team in a position to win this game. Like, again, you don't want to be in a situation where Michael Penix has to throw the ball 40 times a game. You don't want to be in a situation where you need your quarterback to complete 70% of his passes in order for your passing game to work, right? Yeah. Those are all, bonuses or whatnot. But I think absolutely this is a game where you can really kind of show what Jarvis was talking about, where it's like, you're going toe to toe with Jaden Daniels, you're going toe to toe with Josh Allen in a prime time. And this is kind of an opportunity for you to show, okay, that Washington game wasn't just a fluke. This is, again, no shade at Washington or anything like that, but Buffalo, one of the reasons why Buffalo has been so effective over the last couple of years is not only their offense, but their defense has been consistently one of the best defenses in the NFL for, 8 years. Basically, every year that Sean McDermott is there, you can expect a certain level of defensive performance. And if you can get this passing game going against this Bills defense, that basically when you go and you look at recent history, the only teams that really are successful scoring a ton of points against the Bills either have an MVP at quarterback like, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, or they have, one of the top play callers in the NFL, like you saw last year with Detroit with Ben Johnson, like you saw last year with the Rams with Sean McVay. And again, no shade at Zach Robinson. I don't know if we're going to put him in that McVay Ben Johnson tier quite yet, although he can certainly, close the gap if the Falcons get a good performance against Buffalo. But you're going to, again, I don't need Michael Penix to go out there in one game to win the MVP, but I just need just a couple flashes of MVP level performance on a handful of throws in this game, and I think that's going to be the key to getting this win.
Yeah,
and Free, to your point, I think that there was something that I saw last week in that game against the Patriots. The game against the Patriots for the Bills is that the Bills placed some zone coverage, and Drake was able to carve them boys up. So if the Bills come back with that zone coverage, if they throw that at him, because we know that Giro Vero had a lot of success running zone coverage against Michael Penix Jr. So if you see that again, because guess what? That tape is out there. I know Raheem Morris say he wants to flush it and throw it away, but it's still out there. It's still lingering, and teams are going to go back to that game and say, okay, how did they frustrate now? And I think that one of the things that you could say that got him frustrated, or he couldn't quite figure out or get some movement in that offense, was when they were running zone coverage. So I feel like they're going to get some of that, and Michael Penix is going to have to take advantage of that by either, turn around and hand it off because they don't have 8 in the box, or if they're sitting back there in coverage, because what Free Joe mentioned that Milano might not play, so you got a familiar face back there, Shaq Thompson. Can you take advantage of a guy that's been in the league for quite some time? Or, so I think that's going to be the big test for Michael Penix is, can you take advantage of bad tape that's been out there? You had some bad tape against zone coverage. So if Buffalo throws that at you, thinking they can take advantage of you in that particular moment, are you going to be able to do that and have some success moving this offense up and down the field at home?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Jarvis, talking about Drake May, of course, the quarterback for the New England Patriots, the team that gave the Bills their first loss of the season. He had a nice game, one of those games that we were talking about where we don't want to see Michael Penix Jr. necessarily get to the point of throwing the ball 35 or 40 times. Drake May didn't have to do that to have success against the Buffalo Bills. 22 of 30, 273 yards. I mean, it's still a nice game nonetheless for them in terms of just being able to move the ball. Now, of course, their run game was where that kind of complimented, if you will, but it wasn't this gangbusters like game of your life that Drake May had against the Bills. He just took advantage of what the defense gave him. And Jarvis, I think that's what you're saying. If Michael Penix Jr. can take advantage of those little areas that maybe 2 weeks ago we saw, and it was real leaky for him, if you will. Maybe if he can reset, or maybe he has reset working with Zach Robinson to be more prepared for that this upcoming game, then maybe we can see some different things. But will Michael Penix Jr. be X factor? Will it be Bijan Robinson, or will it be someone else on the offensive side of the ball? What about defense and special teams? We'll talk about who could be the difference for the Falcons to get a win. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Now, Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. More IIHS top safety pick plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, Athletes sweat all the details. Mazda bring this same intention to how we craft every model. So you can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. So like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Aaron, every time you have, in my opinion, one of those seminal games, if you will, yes, you're going to get it out of your best players on the offensive, defensive, and special team sides of the ball. But typically speaking, when we get into our post-game show, there's some X factor who really, whether that's a player that we expected to step up and he finally did, or whether that's a player that we didn't really have on our radar and we're like, wow, he was a difference maker. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball for the Falcons. Who would you look to be the X factor if the Falcons are to get the upset Monday night?
Yeah, I think, looking at the offense, T, you already mentioned it, it's Kyle Pitts, right? Mm-hmm. I think if this Falcons offense is going to get a that sort of boost that they need, again, the expectation is Bijan's going to have a big game. One of these wide receivers, whether it's Drake London, whether it's Darnell Mooney, probably also is going to need to have a big game. But if you can get a third option in that sort of situation, and that potentially could be Kyle Pitts, especially given we don't, as we sit here today, don't quite know what the status is of Darnell Mooney heading into that Monday night game. As you said, T, like tight ends have had a lot of success against this Bills defense, in large part due to some of the concerns at linebacker, due to some of the concerns at safety. And we've seen, a newer version of Kyle Pitts where he's out there winning those one-on-ones much more consistently. And if that can continue against this Bills team, I think that will be a huge boost to this offense to really get back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the week, which is, you want this offense to morph into a pick your poison type of offense. Yeah, you put all your, chips in the basket of stopping Bijan. Well, that means something else going to hurt you. And then if you focus on Drake London or Darnell Mooney, that means, Kyle Pitts is still there in order to sort of, pick apart your defense. So I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a huge X factor for this offense.
Yeah, indeed. And Jarvis, you look at the offensive side of the ball. Who's your X factor for Monday night?
Oh, to me, it's Drake London. I look at the success that Stephon Diggs had last week, and that's coming out of the slot. I was like, oh, yeah, we got somebody we could put there that can have some success. Yes, I like that matchup. Drake against anybody, whoever they got over there in the secondary playing that nickel spot. So for me, that has to be the guy. He has continued to show the world, the national media and all that stuff that, hey, man, I'm a top 10 wide receiver in this league. I don't care where you put me in the top 10, but I know I'm top 10. So, and I think that's the big thing for me is that him establishing himself last week, he and Michael Penix being able to get that connection back going that we know that they can get to. They know we know they can get to that space, and we saw it on the field week before last, excuse me. So I think those are some of the things that I think about when you talk about X factor. Drake London was the guy that came to mind, and it comes to mind because he is a guy that can take advantage of some of those matchups, specifically coming out of the slot position.
Now, albeit Stephon Diggs is a little bit different just in terms of his ability to carve up his.
I'm saying the motivation was there too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
there was a little motivation there.
Let's not play games.
A little extra.
He played for the Bills for 4 seasons, so
yes.
He's going up against that secondary for 4 seasons during training camp. He might know a little bit of something about how to take advantage of the Bills. And like you said, Jarvis, I'm sure that he has more than fun sticking it to his old team, albeit a little bit of a pit stop.
Yeah, it's lots of fun sticking to you.
Exactly right, but we know Stephon Diggs for his time with the Buffalo Bills, so we will see. But I do agree with you, however, with you guys. But like I said earlier in the show, and Free mentioned it, Kyle Pitts. That's the guy that might be the X factor just because of what we've seen tight ends be able to do against this Bills offense. But yeah, Drake London could be an X factor too because and this is something you guys mentioned earlier as well, we need to see replication. So great to see you have your breakout game looking like Drake last Sunday, if you will, or Sunday before. But ultimately speaking, we need to see that again and again, and maybe no game more important for us to see replication of that than this upcoming Monday night game against the Bills. Now let's switch free defensively. Who is your X factor in this game?
For me, it's Divine Diablo, right? We talked about how, you don't have necessarily the guys that are built to tackle Josh Allen in the open field. With like the one guy that's like, I'm almost,
He
almost.
is the prototype.
Very few people on this planet are as big as Josh Allen, but he's the closest one you have on your defense that has the speed to chase him in the open field and potentially get him down on the ground. If you're going to stop Josh Allen from doing what Jarvis talked about earlier in the show, which is like, it's 2nd and 14. All right, I'll run for 15 yards or whatever I need to do, because good luck tackling me. If anybody's going to stop that, it's got to be Divine Diablo. Again, like I don't think it's, as we talked about going into the Washington game, it's not going to be just one guy spying the quarterback that is going to solve this problem. You're going to need all hands on deck to take their part. Everybody's going to have to step up. You can't just like, oh, well, Divine's got this. Like, of course, it's going back again. Like you can't stop Josh Allen. You can only hope to contain him. But I do think the guy that's going to have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to that element, as Jarvis said, if you're going to try to take away something from Josh Allen, the running is probably the thing that you have the most control over, because it's just like many people have tried to stop Josh Allen from making throws, and it's a lot easier said than done. But you can at least have somebody on the field that hopefully can contain the running, and on that 2nd and 14, instead of him busting a 15-yard run, he only gets a 5-yard run. And so you're still in 3rd and long on the ensuing play. And I think Divine Diablo is going to be a big part of the Falcons' ability to do that.
Yeah, and maybe another kind of X factor, kind of going back to how you do that. Maybe defensively, you're able to keep Josh Allen on his heels, because maybe the X factor offensively is not one person for me, Jarvis, but maybe it's scoring early. And I don't mean field goals either. That could be the kind of thing where maybe if you're catching Josh Allen playing from behind, maybe that gives your defense a little bit more of an opportunity to be opportunistic. But that said, on the defensive side of the ball for you, who's the X factor?
I'm gonna go with a guy that name starts with X. How about Xavier Watts? How about that? That him being able to being another guy who's a ball hawk, who's proved he's a ball hawk. He did it in college, and ironically, hey, how about that? He's doing the NFL too. Amazing concept. So I think that him figuring out a way to get his hands on the football, I feel like that'll work out in the Falcons' favor a lot, because when you're talking about getting those turnovers, getting that offense, that extra possession with good field position, those are some of the things that help you win big games. And especially, not to say that these teams are so closely matched, but when you have that advantage of being at home, and I think that according to FanDuel, the point spread is like 4.5. So essentially, they're saying they're probably about to get 3 points when you're at home. So essentially they're saying that the Bills are a touchdown better. Hey, how you do close the gap on the touchdown? That how you close that gap? Get a turnover, give your offense the extra possession. And I think Xavier Watts is proven that in the first month of the season that he's that guy. He's that guy that you can come to expect. At some point, he gonna catch these quarterbacks clipping.
Yeah, and one thing you can say about Josh Allen, although he only has the 2 picks so far this season, we still are talking about just 5 weeks into the season. So, in other words, that is technically, of course, that's less than a turnover a game for Josh Allen. But we know, Aaron, that he has the propensity to get into situations where he turns the ball over. So, yeah, Jarvis, I think you just mentioned it, that opportunistic way that Watts is going about playing the game. That's how we need to keep moving. That's how we need to keep seeing the Falcons defense move, in ways that if you can get them to turn the ball over, then that might be a sneaky way for you to walk out of the bins with a win. Now, speaking of sneaky, we need one phase of the game for you, just one phase of the game to be sneaky good for the entirety of the game in all phases of that phase, and that's special teams. But who for you might be the X factor on special teams?
You know, it feels obvious to say the kicker, but I'm going to go for the fruits on the higher branch. I'm going to go for Bradley Pinion, the punter, because for me, field position is going to matter a lot. And again, we talk about containing this Bills offense, not necessarily stopping it. You got to make this Bills offense work for every yard and every point that they get. And for being able to pin them inside their own 10, flipping that field position, winning that field position battle, and basically say, okay, go 90 yards. If you go 90 yards, great. You earned it. You earned those points. But we're going to force you to go 90 yards instead of 75 yards, or those types of things, as well as on the kickoff thing. So I do feel like Bradley Pinion needs to have a good game in order to make this Bills team work for every yard, every point that they get in this game. And I think field position is going to be very meaningful for that.
Yeah. I think that's a huge point, Free, because, and Jarvis, you alluded to it as well. In this kind of game, you want two things. You want your quarterback to have the opportunity to not have to drive the totality of the field, but you definitely want to make the other quarterback do that thing. So, yeah, I think that it's so critical that maybe what we don't talk about in terms of special teams, like I'm not looking for this to necessarily be one where there's a game-winning field goal on the line, but maybe you avoid that as well if the other aspects of your special teams unit is actually functioning effectively.
Absolutely. And I think that you can help that field position like Free talked about, and not having to drive in the totality of the field, like you mentioned, by having your punt returner or your kick returner in Jamal Agnew, break one. Can you break one at the house? Because, he's dealing with the injuries, coming off of injuries, starting to see a little bit, of him, starting to be a little bit more of himself, what the expectations are when they brought him in. And I think that bye week, the early bye week is probably going to should work out in his favor to get him to where he needs to be, where he's 100%, and fully ready to go. So that's the guy that I'm looking at. I'm gonna have my eye on when, as far as the kick return game. And another guy I want to slightly mention who I like. What I saw from him, what I've been seeing from him, in a return game as well, is Ray McCloud. Ray McCloud has had some nice returns against the Washington Commanders. There, like I talked about with Marquise Williams, seeing something in that Washington Commanders coverage kickoff team where he called the same return and back to back when Natron Brooks got hurt, and Ray McCloud was able to basically had that same pattern and basically almost break that bad boy again. So when you have little things like that, adjustments like that by your special teams coordinator, who a lot of people want to try to get up out of here, this is the game where you kind of quiet those people. You quell those calls and say, hey, man, I know what I'm doing, and we're trying to figure this thing out. And I think that, Jamal Agnew, Ray McCloud, those are the type of guys that can potentially get it done.
Yeah. And you talk about this being an important game all the way around for the Falcons, but sometimes, and don't get me wrong, all 17 games are important, but two things. Number one, sometimes the game is more important for a particular individual, whether that's on the field or on the sideline. Sometimes the game is more important because of where you are in the season. And sometimes it's all of the above. And Free, I feel like this is one of those games where it's important for the Falcons because it'd be nice for them to have back-to-back wins. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills are perennial Super Bowl contenders, so it'd be good for them to get that game against an actual viable Super Bowl contender. But maybe for Raheem Morris, maybe more so than any of the other coaches or any of the players, this is that type of game that really helps to put a stamp on your legacy. And in a season where you're probably not on the hot seat anymore, I don't even know if the seat is maybe still warm, maybe it's lukewarm, but in order for that seat not to become a hot seat again, this is probably a really important win for Raheem Morris.
Yeah, I think, it'll be interesting to see how these next couple of weeks go, because I think at least with the Falcon fans I speak to on a daily, weekly basis, like they tend to ride that emotional roller coaster where it's like when the Falcons win, it's like, hey man, nobody can stop us. We're going all the way to the Super Bowl. And when the Falcons lose, it's like, this is the worst team in the history of sports. They need to fire everybody. All this stuff.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things where like people ride that emotional roller coaster, and so you want the high highs of beating a team like the Bills. You saw it last year where the Falcons did not have a lot of success against playoff teams outside of their division, but they did get one signature win early in the season against Philadelphia, who happened to win the Super Bowl that year. And it's like, you talk about the Bills being the Super Bowl favorite. They're the number one favorite team on FanDuel right now to win the Super Bowl this year. And so if this becomes a signature of the Raheem Morris era of like, hey, we're going to beat a Super Bowl team every single year, right? Now, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to win every other game as we've seen, but like if we can just sit there and say like when this team faces that premium competition, that they rise to the occasion, I do think that is huge for a coach like Raheem Morris, and that really does build the confidence for this team to potentially, go on a run over this middle stretch of the season where they face some tough opponents, but they also have some, potential softballs as well. And you want to build that momentum, starting with a big win on Monday night against, arguably the best team in the league.
Yeah, that low-key confidence, Jarvis, especially if a young defense is able to get it done for the Falcons and help them get a win, that would be huge. But what about for Raheem Morris, legacy-wise?
I think this game is for the section of this fan base that did not like the Raheem Morris hire from the get-go. They despised it. They don't like it at all. They wanted Bill Belichick, and that's just what they wanted. And for me, I think that these wins like these, if you're able to get a win against the Buffalo Bills, that's going to help kind of keep them quiet a little bit, because a lot of times people gonna ride that opinion till they can't ride it anymore. Meaning, like, either they're going to be right about it or they're going to act like it never happened. They're never going to admit they're wrong, right? So I think this type of game for Ra is, hey, let me go ahead and continue to prove that I'm the head coach of this team. And I think that I don't think they're going to be a parade for him if they get the win, but it's going to feel really good if they're able to pull this bad boy out. And I think that, Ra he needs these signature wins. He needs to continue to keep stacking these bad boys up, because that was a good win against the Washington Commanders.
Sure.
They needed that bad boy. The backs against the wall. He was saying, hey, man, I believe in Mike. I'm not wavering. Like, I love conviction. That's one thing when it comes to ball. I love when people have conviction. If you have conviction about something, roll with it. Stand on it, even in the tough times, because that's how I know you have conviction. When you stand on it, when all the poop is coming at you, yeah, that's how I know it's real. That's how I know exactly it's real. So yeah, I think this is a chance for Rod to continue to stack these signature wins. And like you said, if you're able to get it, it's going to mean that this offense is doing well, and then Jeff Obrey got this defense humming. So all things will be well if they're able to get this win.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. Maria Martin, host of Sports Extra on Sundays on 11 Live, will be back next week. And you can catch Jarvis as a frequent contributor for Locked On Falcons and Sports Extra. See you next time.